Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, Anthropic CEO does a massive 180 on federal AI policy, the model wars go nuclear with GPT 5.4, and a Chinese open-source disruptor, and we look at why Palantir's CEO thinks a 180 IQ doesn't make you smarter than a goat.
Yeah, the timeline is it's pretty relentless today.
That's for real. You are tuning in right now to your curated shortcut to the day's most critical market, tech, and cultural signals. This deep dive is designed to cut through the noise. We're taking the raw data, the trending posts, the corporate announcements, and filtering them down to the second-order effects that actually impact your portfolio and your strategy.
Right, because my focus here is entirely on the structural shifts. I'm looking past the sanitized press releases to figure out where the capital is actually flowing, who's exposed to sudden regulatory risk, and, how shifting consensus might completely break existing business models.
Exactly. So let's start off with a massive disruption at the intersection of AI, defense, and the federal government. A viral post from the handle NS123ADC just detailed a live interview with Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei. And he issued a highly public apology for a leaked internal Slack memo dated March 5th, 2026.
Which has been, frankly, brutal for their enterprise positioning.
Yeah, and quick pause here just to be absolutely clear to you, the listener. We are strictly reporting the contents of this leaked memo and Amodei's subsequent apology.
100%. We remain entirely neutral. We are not endorsing any political viewpoint or administration. We're just analyzing this strictly through the lens of market mechanics and business facts.
Right. So the leaked memo criticized the Trump administration, accusing them of targeting Anthropic with Pentagon supply chain risk labels.
Yeah.
And the internal post alleged this targeting occurred because Anthropic withheld what the memo termed dictator-style praise for the administration,
Explicitly drawing a contrast with how their rival, OpenAI, navigated that same political landscape.
Exactly. And then Amodei goes on live television, completely walking back the memo and referring to that internal dialogue as among the most disorienting times in Anthropic's history.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this highlights a critical vulnerability. Political alignment is, it's no longer a peripheral public relations issue. It is a fundamental existential business risk.
For sure.
If a primary enterprise AI provider is slapped with a Pentagon supply chain risk label, the ripple effects are immediate.
But isn't that just the reality of operating in the B2G space? I mean, if you want federal contracts, you navigate the administration's demands. OpenAI clearly recognized that the fastest path to dominating the public sector was diplomatic alignment, whereas Anthropic's internal culture seemingly rejected that pragmatism.
That is the core friction. We are looking at a potential bifurcation in the market here. Are we heading toward a reality where certain frontier models become the de facto infrastructure for federal contracts simply because their executives play the political game better?
It's a massive advantage if they do.
Exactly. Because if you are a venture capitalist backing an AI startup at a $100 billion valuation, that valuation requires federal revenue. A supply chain risk label craters that financial modeling instantly. I mean, an engineering moat is essentially worthless if compliance and political friction lock you out of the largest procurement budgets in the world.
That tension between private tech and the defense sector isn't just about compliance, though. It is where the most aggressive capital is deploying right now. Molly O'Shea posted today that Nominal has officially hit a $1 billion valuation.
Already?
Yeah. They just raised an $80 million B2 round led by Founders Fund, with Trey Stevens taking point. And this comes a mere 10 months after a $75 million Series B.
Pricing a defense tech startup at $1 billion in a 10-month turnaround signals an incredibly aggressive thesis from Founders Fund.
The margin expansion there is undeniable, though. Nominal is systematically replacing Excel and MATLAB for hardware testing telemetry. They've already captured 4 of the 5 largest U.S. defense primes as clients. Their platform is cutting test campaigns by 50 to 60%, which translates to saving these defense primes up to $3 million daily. That's what's driving their current 7x revenue growth.
The growth metrics are impressive, I'll give them that.
Right.
But we have to interrogate the broader environment. Is this rapid capital deployment a genuine efficiency play, or are we witnessing the overheating of a military tech complex?
How do you mean?
Well, you have alumni from Anduril and Founders Fund pouring vast amounts of liquidity into defense software. $1 billion valuation on that compressed timeline prices and an assumption of sustained, escalating global conflict and permanently bloated Department of Defense budgets.
I'd push back on the idea that it's purely betting on conflict. even in a peacetime scenario. The DoD procurement and testing infrastructure is notoriously archaic. If defense primes are still using Microsoft Excel to run telemetry on billion-dollar aerospace hardware, modernizing that stack isn't just an aggressive defense bet.
It's just basic modernization.
Exactly. It's a fundamental digital transformation play.
Yeah.
Saving $3 million a day is a massive operational unlock, regardless of the geopolitical temperature.
It's a valid counterpoint, provided the software actually delivers on that scale across legacy hardware interfaces without requiring, massive custom integration for every prime contractor.
And the software underlying all of that infrastructure just took another major leap forward. Transitioning to the model wars, the OpenAI devs account just announced the rollout of GPT 5.4.
Here we go.
The spec sheet is formidable. We're looking at native computer use capabilities, 1 million context tokens specifically optimized in Codex, and architectural updates that reportedly reduce reasoning errors by 18%.
Yeah, but...
And it crushes benchmarks. It hit 83% on the GDPO benchmark and an unprecedented 75% on Alice World Verified. It's priced at $2.50 per million input tokens.
See, I am highly skeptical of the marketing surrounding these massive context windows.
Why? 1 million tokens is huge for developers.
It is, but the Roundtable Space account published a thorough critique today, noting that this specific model was tested under the codename Galapagos. If you look at the underlying architecture, a 1 million token context window usually results in severe attention degradation.
You're referring to the lost-in-the-middle phenomena where models fail to retrieve data buried deep in the prompt.
Precisely. Pushing a model past 128K tokens often forces a trade-off. It prioritizes superficial retrieval over nuanced synthesis. The model might hold 1 million tokens, but its ability to actually execute complex reasoning across that dataset degrades significantly. It's a gimmick that sacrifices nuanced reasoning for marketing breadth.
Even if the recall degrades at the absolute limits of the context window, that 75% benchmark on OS World Verified cannot be dismissed. We're talking about an agent that can natively navigate a desktop environment, open applications, and execute workflows autonomously.
That's true.
That agentic action is a massive leap, regardless of whether a developer utilizes the full million token limit.
Agentic capability is certainly the frontier, but OpenAI's push forward is currently causing massive friction with their existing user base.
Oh, the backlash is real today. Sam Altman casually posted about a new fast mode, adding, "I think people will like this." But the replies under his post from the handle Sama are a war zone.
The deprecation issue.
Yes. Users are furious over the scheduled February 2026 retirement of GPT 4.0. The hashtag Keep4o movement has rapidly accumulated 20,000 petition signatures. There are even credible reports circulating of 2.5 million subscriber cancellations directly tied to this retirement.
Because they formed emotional attachments to it.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
view it as an AI companion rather than just a software tool.
This exposes a massive flaw in how AI companies view their product lifecycle versus how consumers internalize it. OpenAI operates on a standard SaaS framework. You push an update, you sunset the legacy version to save on compute.
Right, standard procedure.
But the user psychology here is fundamentally different. When you deprecate a highly conversational, voice-enabled model, you aren't just forcing a UI update, you are severing a parasocial relationship.
Beyond the consumer psychology, the enterprise fallout is arguably worse. If you are a developer relying on specific prompt engineering optimized for GPT 4.0, ripping that foundational model out with barely a month's notice destroys your entire pipeline. It forces developers to constantly rewrite their architecture just to keep pace with OpenAI's internal schedule.
It represents an unacceptable level of platform risk. Are sudden model deprecations destroying enterprise workflows? You cannot build a durable business if your core infrastructure is subject to sudden unilateral deprecation.
Which makes the alternative ecosystem increasingly attractive. Julian Goldie, SEO, posted a massive update regarding the open source community today.
The ByteDance model.
Yeah, a Chinese open source AI super agent called Deerflow 2.0. It is currently exploding on GitHub with over 24.9K stars. This framework doesn't just respond to chat prompts. It researches, writes code, creates files, and launches in isolated sandboxes using persistent memory and parallel subagents.
The divergence in strategy here is critical. U.S. developers are increasingly trapped in the proprietary ecosystem of OpenAI and Anthropic, battling those sudden deprecations and political compliance we just talked about.
While ByteDance is flooding the zone.
Exactly. They're flooding the zone with open source agentic frameworks that bypass those constraints entirely. However, testing an agent in an isolated sandbox is radically different from deploying it into a messy, legacy corporate repository. The real-world success rates of these autonomous agents on complex repos is usually marginal.
And furthermore, integrating a framework with Chinese developer origins autonomously into a U.S. corporate environment triggers massive security red flags.
Oh, Matt.
Giving an external agent the permissions to write and deploy code introduces severe supply chain vulnerabilities, especially given the heightened federal scrutiny we discussed with Anthropic.
The enterprise market might desire the freedom of open source, but compliance departments will veto any autonomous agent that carries that level of geopolitical risk.
Yet, utility sometimes overrides cultural or political posturing, which brings us to Grok. The official Grok account demonstrated its new multimodal voice feature today by attaching files. In the demo, a user seamlessly scans a complex California lease agreement using their camera while maintaining a voice conversation with the AI.
I saw that demo.
It instantly analyzes the document and flags a hidden 10% rent cap violation alongside improper eviction clauses. And CB_Doge followed that up with App Store analytics showing Grok downloads surging 26.89% month over month. And that's compounding the 9.59 million downloads they secured in January.
XAI has positioned Grok aggressively as the anti-establishment alternative, but you have to separate that cultural branding from the actual product mechanics. Is Grok seeing this massive growth simply because of its perceived anti-woke market positioning, or is the multimodal utility actually driving it?
The lease agreement demo suggests the utility is real. If the vision-to-voice latency is that low and the legal analysis is accurate, a tool that saves a user from a predatory contract in real time has intrinsic value.
Sure.
Let's shift the focus to how this raw AI capability is completely restructuring the creative and developer economies. We're tracking a massive wave of specialized agents today.
The execution layer is getting crushed.
Completely. Luma Labs AI launched Luma agents to collaborate on text, image, video, and audio workflows. Simultaneously, LTX Studio dropped LTX 2.3, claiming the title for the fastest 4K video generation globally, with native dialogue syncing and heavily reduced motion artifacts.
The economic implications for the creative services industry are brutal. We are observing the total compression of creative campaigns. A campaign that previously took weeks can now be compressed to hours, but who loses their jobs as a result?
The builder economy is seeing the exact same trend with UI and UX developer tools. Aidenby launched React Grab, an open-source extension to capture precise UI context for Claude or Codex. Learn2Vibe went viral with a Claude code hack to prompt a directory of landing pages rather than just one. And Figma announced the highly anticipated slots feature to stop component detach hell.
If we synthesize these updates, we are moving from fragmented sauce tools, where a team utilizes a dozen disparate tools, to deeply integrated AI-driven composition.
So the barrier to entry is dropping to zero.
Yes.
Which means the economics of individual creators are expanding wildly. Let's look at the economics of X. The indie entrepreneur levels IO publicly revealed his X creator payouts for the month.
The transparency on those numbers is rare.
And the figures are substantial. He made $12,807 this month alone. That's $10.05K in ad revenue sharing and $2K from direct subscriptions. He noted the median is around $9,000 a month. Commenters were dubbing him the 0.07% elite.
This raises an important question. Is X a viable business asset for indie entrepreneurs, or it's temporary incentive design? If you value a $120 account, that's $1 million asset, but it's rented land.
The platform risk is immense, yes. But it requires a level of self-awareness to navigate that, which ties perfectly into a viral cultural moment shared by A16Z and the user John_. It features Palantir CEO Alex Karp systematically roasting Silicon Valley's culture, presenting as the smartest in the room.
Karp's delivery is ruthless here.
He targets tech leaders directly. His quote was, "Just because you have a 180 IQ does not mean you are smarter than a goat." He cites his own dyslexia as a strength for self-awareness, calling out the Dunning-Kruger effect across the industry.
I love this critique. The tech industry suffers from a chronic lack of intellectual humility. Deep, domain-specific intelligence is useless if you lack self-awareness in unfamiliar areas. You see founders who scaled a SaaS product suddenly acting like geopolitical experts.
It is a sharp reality check. So, as we synthesize all the signals from the defense contracts, the models, and the open source surge, what is your definitive prediction for tomorrow?
Based on the Anthropic memo fallout and the rise of ByteDance's Deerflow 2.0, expect open source AI to trigger a massive new wave of U.S. regulatory scrutiny tomorrow, forcing tech companies to publicly pick sides between rapid global deployment and government compliance.
The fault lines are being drawn. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm going to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If an AI can now navigate your operating system, test your aerospace hardware, and rewrite your lease agreement, at what point does your own domain expertise become just another API call?
That is the million-dollar question.
Stay sharp, keep your edge, and thank you for joining the Daily Vibecasting. We will see you in the feed.